Alrighty, we've got the swing arm here. We're going to replace the bearings. First thing I want to show you is to check the U-joints for any kind of play or stiffness. We got real lucky on this one. The U-joints are in pretty good condition. And it has a good action to it and no excessive play. It's definitely going to work for several more miles. To remove the swing arm bearings, we just are going to basically pop these parts out. There's a spacer sleeve. And then take the seal out. Okay. And take the bearing out. Before we change these, we're just going to have a look at what kind of shape they're in. Oh, they're pretty worn. So it'll affect handling. And therefore we should replace these bearings. And to do that, you need a bearing extractor. Like this Kuko puller. This is really awesome. So this puller expands inside, grabs the race from behind, and then we push against the swing arm and the bearing comes out easily. Nothing to it when you have the right tools. These are available on our website too, in different sizes. There's a different size for the swing arm, for the steering head, and for other bearings that you might need to pull out. It's a great tool to have. Okay, so now it's a matter of cleaning out all the old grease. We'll drive the new bearings in and put a new seal in. We'll be ready to install. Okay, I've turned the swing arm around now and I'm going to pull the bearing out on the other side. With swing arm bearings and also steering head bearings is they're not spinning all the time. They're just going back and forth, and that wears a groove in the bearing race. Okay, you can see the way the bearing looks here. It's got all these worn spots. That's why we're replacing these bearings. Okay, both the old bearings are out, and now we're going to put the outer races in first, just using a standard bearing driver. Okay. All right, the new outer races have been installed, and now it's time to put the tapered bearings in, and these need to be greased first. Now, if you have a bearing packer, cool, stick it in, fill it up with grease. If you don't, I recommend packing them by hand, and I'll show you how to do that. Don't just smear grease on that's not enough. You want to get some grease in the palm of your hand. And don't use wheel bearing grease for swing arms or for steering head bearings, because wheel bearing grease is a high temperature grease, and because there's no rotation going on in this application, it'll never reach the proper temperature. Whereas this LM47 from Liquimoly is ideal in that it will provide great lubrication without needing to get heated up. So just simply go in and press the bearing from the wide end until you see the grease coming through. Then you know you've got grease all the way inside. And just keep doing that all the way around. Now that bearing is properly greased. And while I'm at it, and I'm going to do the other bearing right away before I go any further with the reassembly. The bearings have been greased here, and I'm going to put the seal in. The little sleeve has to go in first. Good idea just to put a little smear of grease on there too, on the seal right now. Put that in. And then this is going to be installed with whatever you have available. Some kind of socket like this that has to be able to straddle the spacer and hit around the outside. Socket. Okay, just about there. Now we're going to change out this boot. Start by taking the clamp off, of course. So if there's two styles of boots that we sell for the Swingarm. This is the original BMW type, and this is what we call the improved version from Swingarm. The big advantage to the Swingarm boot is it's got a groove on the inside here, and so it works especially well on the paralever model bikes, for example, the R100 GS. For the dual swing arm ones, you could use this, no problem. It's a great boot, it's really good material, but I'm going to use this one. This is the original one, and we're trying to just keep this bike sort of original, and it's also a good boot. Almost impossible to put on a paralever, so if you have a paralever model, definitely you want the Swingarm boot. In this case, this will work. Now, these are directional. It's got a couple things written on it. It says Oben, it says Getriebeseite, and Oben means top, and Getriebeseite means transmission side. So that's going to be, Oben's going to go here, and this is how it's going to go. And by the way, the Swingarm boots are also marked identically. If we were restoring this bike at this point in time, I would, of course, replace this clamp, but it's still serviceable, and well, we're not painting the swing arm or doing anything fancy with this bike, so we're going to run this another go around here. Okay, so now we've got the gearbox back in place. We replaced the swing arm bearings, and we're going to reinstall the swing arm and the final drive, and then start getting the whole rear end of the bike back together again. Now's a really good time before we get started to take the rear brake lever off and clean the bushings, re-grease everything. You never get a better shot at it. Okay, I've loosened the pivot bolt and going to remove that now and then take the rear brake lever off. Give it a little cleaning. Just years of dried, crusty grease. Might as well clean it up before we put it back in. Okay, that looks a whole lot better now. And the pin's all cleaned up, so we'll put it all back together. All right, let's put this swing arm back in. So once you've got the swing arm pivots in place, you can put a 6mm Allen in here in the middle of the pivot pins and get them started and screwed in. And then you want to center the swing arm so you have about the same gap on both sides inside the frame. Okay, so my gap's looking pretty good here. It's very even on there, both sides. Okay, the swing arm pivot bolts are in, and I'm gonna just torque one side. These get torqued to 100 Newton meters. Okay, I've tightened one side. The other side is still loose. The lock nut is loose, and I'm gonna preload the pin. These are tapered bearings. They need to have a little bit of preload on them. So basically, the first preload is to go to 20 Newton meters. And that'll kind of help to seat everything, squish the grease out. And then you go ahead and loosen it, and then come up on it with 12 Newton meters. And now torque the other locking nut. Okay, so we have greased these swing arm bearings prior to installing them. Going forward for routine maintenance, one of these grease guns is really a cool way to go. You just simply put it in the middle of the pivot and you force grease into the bearing and it'll come out through the seal. And you need that for the routine maintenance. The grease gun also comes with another little fitting here that's used for regular Zerk fittings. And the cone-shaped one is perfect for the swing arm bearings. Okay, so now I'm going to reinstall the final drive that we resealed. Replace this gasket. Okay, now we'll put the rear shock back on this side. Drop a Loctite on these suspension bolts is a good idea. Okay, now we're going to reinstall the brake cam that we took off earlier on. And we made a little scribe mark on there so it could go back on the same way. A little bit of grease on the shaft. There's a felt washer goes here. Okay, I've lined up my little score mark, so that should be in the correct position. Okay, we're going to put a new set of brake shoes on this bike. Here again, a little bit of grease is a real good idea. Very lightly though. We don't want grease getting on the brakes. This is really good grease. It doesn't take much to give good lubrication. Installing is real easy. First thing you just need to do is hook the springs in. And then they go on like this. Set one on there like so. And there you have it. Clean and lightly grease the pivot. Okay, Now we're ready to put the rear wheel back on, but that'll be covered in our next video, which is also going to talk about re-greasing and adjusting the wheel bearings. So we'll see you for that one. Thanks.